talking about today, but giving us a couple of opportunities to hear from some different people. So before we get started, let's do the introductions. My name is George. I'm the head of communications at Ukie. And then we've got over there, sitting in what looks like I've got to say, a frankly lovely living room, Max over at Glitches. Hello, Max.
Hi there. Yeah, thanks for the compliment. Yeah, I'm Max. I'm the CEO of Glitches Games, and yeah, we've recently moved up to Edinburgh in Scotland.
I've got to say, moved up to Edinburgh, Scotland, and apparently moved into the Made.com magazine as well, because that is looking absolutely fantastic in there. So thank you, Max. And we've got Dan as well. So Dan, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah, of course. My name is Dan Bernardo, and I am the founder and creative director for Playtra Games. We are a studio with nine people here in Vauxhall, London.
Fantastic. So it's going to be a good opportunity for us to hear from Dan and Max, who are very nearly one of my favorite point and click adventures from the 1990s. But let's go in with a first question. It's something that was coming up in the last session, and a few of them was about pipelines and workflows and about how you basically efficiently manage them. Dan, do you want to just give us a little bit of insight about what you're doing in terms of Playtra when it comes to managing those?
Yes, of course. So Playtra is a very young group of people working in our first game. So it's everything quite new. I myself come from the tech industry. It's my first game development. So there's a lot of learning on that. But I think creating a stable pipeline is kind of universal for all tech sectors. So I brought a lot of what I had before. I think whatever I'm going to say here, I'm pretty sure somebody said before about organization, communication, but I think most importantly, and what's helping a lot with us right now is the personal relationships that we built before the world ended, and how we can nurture and can continue, making this still a healthy relationship with distance. So what we are doing here at Playtra is using probably more tools than we ever did before to try to keep the work in check. But I think the most important thing is about checking each other and make sure that we are okay. And we don't talk just about work.
Yes, exactly, because there is more to life than work. This is what I've heard. I'm not sure if it's true though, but we'll find out. Max, I mean, throwing a similar question towards you as well, but just to build upon it too. When it comes to managing this, both how do you do it and who in particular in your company is responsible for this? Is it the case that you've got someone who's kind of an appointed champion, who's very much like, right, you're going to be the person who's making sure this all flows fine and dandy? Or is it actually something where it becomes much more integral to the overall studio culture and that everyone chips in?
I'll jump in if you don't mind. Yeah, I mean, planning projects in a pipeline of work is a really, it's a long process to get it right. We've run Glitches now for 7 years, and we've done lots and lots of very short projects. And I think that short projects end up being manic, and longer projects end up being manic at various stages of them. So I think over time, what's happened is we've kind of built up what you don't realize at the time, these kind of little resources that plug in, and these people that you talk to and discuss certain aspects as you go along. And it can be from, like people who you don't deal with on a day-to-day basis, like lawyers and all that kind of stuff. Can even be like, building into your pipeline, doing play tests at Ukie, which we've done a few times as well. But on a day-to-day basis, initially it was something that floated between lots of people. And we've just recently hired a project manager who works with us 3 days a week. And it honestly has been an amazing experience having someone who's dedicated to making sure that all those projects are running, and they're responsible for making sure that dates and times kind of match up. And it kind of lets me personally kind of step away from it slightly. I still kind of grab on with both hands at times. But it's really handy. And I think that as we're kind of learning to relinquish controls as people who build video games, I think you do kind of hold tightly onto those tasks initially. It's been really good.
Yeah, and that brings into a really interesting point, and I think touches back on what something else Dan was talking about, which was, the people who you're trusting to do this, right? Who you've built those relationships with, who you've brought into your team, and especially at this moment in time, who are obviously a lot of them working remotely. So people have got to be pretty autonomous. So Dan, when we're thinking about that autonomy issue, and about how autonomous people are, how much do you actually give to people in terms of managing their own timelines in relation to their project versus holding them to something that's very sort of clear and accountable? Because, I appreciate that in normal times, it may be easier to estimate how long something's going to take, but with a global pandemic raging and having been going on for the past year, could be a touch trickier.
Yeah, I give nothing. I rule with an iron fist. I'm kidding. Of course. I think this actually was a huge, for us, a huge challenge and a huge problem in the very beginning. First week, everybody is like, oh, I'm working from home. It's so cool. Second week, people start getting to because we have stand-up meeting every morning. So everybody comes and discuss what they're going to do today. And I just noticing people arriving with the pajamas and the hair is just like that. And it was like, okay, for something like this to work, for me to be able to like trust that everybody's doing what they're doing, we have to follow our rituals. And I think rituals in companies is very important. Like, what do you do in an almost religious manner? And this just like gets you in the mood. I keep saying to the team, get ready and get prepared as you feel going to the studio. Like I don't want anyone in the pajamas. I don't want anyone with the hair undone. I want everybody ready the same way it will be if you go to the studio. This helps a lot getting people to know that they are actually in the work mode. But on top of that, I think because we work with agile methodology and extreme computing, we normally just trust people. We just say normally all the tasks that we have here written by and evaluated by the people who are going to do it, and they are never questioned. So if somebody tells me it's going to take 3 days, it's 3 days. We just with time we just realize this is the best way of doing this, because people tend, when they are given this freedom, they tend to take responsibility. I think nobody likes micromanagement, imagine, in this situation.
No, exactly. And I think one of the things that's interesting there as well is that idea of, the way we work during a pandemic and what we have to do to kind of maintain those rituals. I mean, I'm speaking from my own experience. Though I have a lovely flat, my work is set up in my room. So in terms of, I have to very clearly sort of delineate between that moment where it's my bedroom and it is somewhere that I sleep and relax. And also this is the space where at the end of the day, I finish up. So doing things like literally packing my laptop away into my rucksack like I normally would, to say that's the end of the day. And that's something that I'm going to do in about 15 minutes, unless I'm doing the Gabatown networking, of course. But just to dive in here and go towards Max, actually, I think there's something that's interrelated to a lot of this. And there's a question that's come through from one of our Q&A, and it's about communication. Because, especially with everyone distributed potentially all over the country, or just even all over a single city and phoning in, it can be quite difficult to actually keep everyone in contact with one another so that when you're running this project, everything is running smoothly. So how do you deal with problems in team communication, just generally, but also potentially more specifically with the pandemic going on?
I'm going to answer the previous question quickly, because I think I've got something interesting to add, and then I'm going to jump onto this one. I think working in a pandemic and during lockdowns and kind of on and off lockdowns is really complicated. And I think that the way a lot of employers thought things would go is that they thought, do you know what, people are going to be at home, they're going to be doing what they want. And actually, I didn't experience that personally, and I didn't experience that from other people in our team. What I experienced was having to tell them to get off Slack and have to tell them to stop working at a certain time. It was really weird, actually. I think when you give people the trust of working from home, and this is in our experience, I don't think this is true for everyone, they kind of they kind of feel more responsible in some ways. And I think that's really the opposite of what a lot of companies expected.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, working from home has become like suddenly a viable thing. But I noticed that you're right. There's this bit at the end of the day where like, I cannot switch off. I cannot easily convert my brain from work to like just chilling out, especially if it's in the same room, right? So we experimented and we stuck with this, actually shaving an hour off the work day. So instead of working from 9 to 6, what we used to do, we now work from 9 till 5. And it actually made such a big difference because at the end of the day, I found myself personally just kind of dawdling around. Not that I wasn't trying to work, but I was just done in. My brain was fried. And I think when you're working at home, you're less likely to go out for lunch, especially in a lockdown. You're spending more time at your desk. I felt this hour was essential to kind of give back, and the experiment led us to do this permanently. And I think it's been really positive. Clocking off at 5, or you know, some people do stay a little bit longer, but it doesn't cut too much into their evening.
Yeah.
And saying bye on Slack, see ya, when I'm going. And sometimes that will mean I don't say bye because at times I'll be there at 8:30 still plugging away at something. And to get on to your next question about how do you deal with the problems in the team with communication? I saw it pop up on the questions and answers thing, so I'm sort of reading it back. I think you have to be straightforward.
Yeah.
When you're talking with people in person, I think it's very difficult at times to be very, very straightforward, and there are ways to approach it. Actually, there is a positive thing about communicating via online messaging or face-to-face conversation. It feels easier somehow to be direct. And I think in the place of, you know, business and work, that's actually beneficial. I found it to be really good to, you know, there's mention in the last speak by Melissa about having these check-ins with people.
Yeah.
And one-on-one catch-ups are really nice because you actually get to see someone without the rest of the team, you know, and that's really cool. So I think dealing with these kind of problems is like, just be direct.
Yeah. Be direct, tackle those issues. I think as well, you know, in terms of my general advice of doing a lot of communication as well, I mean, that is literally my job. You know, there are always things like, I think Melissa was making the point about always remembering that everyone wants to be doing a good job, and making sure that when you're thinking about the way you communicate, that you're particularly careful about the different contexts of it. You know, things like emails and written text, people will always read them in a harsher way than you intended them to do. So, you know, one of the things was, well, a couple of the best pieces of advice that I had about writing was, first of all, and especially when it comes to emails, always write as if you're about to be deposed, you know, so make sure that you're always on top and professional. And then the second element is always write as if you're writing to a beloved relative in terms of how nice you're being towards someone. Obviously not using the same language, but in terms of your sentiment, just because so much can get lost in translation that, you know, you've got to be making sure that you kind of balance those kinds of things and make sure that while you're getting to the point and all of those kinds of things, which are totally 100% the right thing to do, you don't accidentally end up putting something in and suddenly going, oh, blimey, I've accidentally caused an issue here because I just phrased a sentence a little bit clumsily. But Dan, going to that communication point as well, what's been your experience too?
I'm gonna just add one of your list is never email after 7 p.m. I think the most rude emails that I ever wrote was when I was tired. Just try not to do it. It's funny what Max said that is about like being direct, and I find it's interesting that different teams find different ways of doing this. I feel like because of the pandemic, I tend to be less direct. I tend to be more like, hey, how are you? How things are doing? How's your mom? I just want to make sure that like I cannot see you sometimes. So I don't know what your mental, emotional state is. So I have to start like with a bit of interlude and try to understand what we are going through first. We have some rules in the team. One of them is that you never ask to call somebody. You never ask, are you free? You just call. The same way you will probably not be shouting from the other side of the studio, can I come to your desk? You normally just go to the desk. So I try to replicate things like this. The other thing we normally do is I normally have, there's 9 of us, and I used to have a one-to-one with each one of them every week. And now what I'm doing is that I'm getting, it's a bit complicated, but we have a rotation of one person having one-to-one with everybody else. So what happens is that I normally get to have conversations with people that I don't actually work normally, and try to, the discussion is always about the project. So I'm probably going to get somebody who's like, let's say, development. They never actually talk to people from art unless there's a problem, to come together and have a half an hour conversation a week. And it's trying to, normally we're probably talking bullshit, but it's always a good thing to like keep people connected. I'm trying as much as I can, and I understand that it's hard for people with like bigger teams and people with teams in different time zones, but I'm trying to create more out of work like experience for everybody. So I got like, get Disney Plus and everybody's gonna watch the same movie together or something like that. I think the important thing for me, from my team, is I try to understand how the lockdown is interfering with their emotional state more than anything else. And second, especially for, lots of developers are quite young and they are living in London by themselves. And London is very expensive. So we live in a little room, each person, and it's isolated. So I'm trying to create something outside the work for them, make sure that they feel they are not alone in this situation. Just makes better for everybody.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. And I think, a lot of what we do at Ukie, Max has alluded to our playtesting sessions, that tends to happen during our Friday social, where the team all collectively downs tools for a couple of hours and we sit and play games together. We've got a Discord channel. Last week, there was a group of people watching me play Crusader Kings for the first time because people were like, hey, what is this? So I went and possibly the world's worst let's play. But I think one of the things that's been really interesting, though, is about that focus about, when we've had a lot of great talks talking about managing workloads from that practical perspective, but with people under such a mental strain at the moment and such an emotional strain with what's going on, managing workloads, it's not just about your techniques and tactics for doing so in terms of your workflows, it's about how you manage those people. And I think it's been really, really interesting to hear from both of you about how that's going in there. So we've got just a matter of minutes now before we all go off to Gavatown. So I'm going to just round off with actually just an opportunity for some final tips and or tricks or techniques, because I think that's just going to be a good opportunity to round that conversation. So when it comes to managing workflows and managing workloads just in general, Max, what are your final pieces of advice that you'd like to give everyone?
I'm a massive fan of a stand-up.
Yeah.
So we do daily stand-ups, keep them super sweet and short. What did you do yesterday? What did you do today? Let's do it. And I love that. That's kind of nice. It means everyone gets to know a little bit of what everyone else is up to. And it means we'll kind of all come together for like 15 minutes in the morning and then we're off. It's good. I like that a lot.
Daily stand-up. So that's one way of keeping things going. And Dan, what's your top tip?
I think take notes of what you're doing. We have stand-ups as well, so I'm not going to go through it. I agree with Max completely. But we go a step further to have stand-ups of the end of the day. I just know how things went. These things take 15 minutes. Just like Max said, is short and sweet and so good for everybody together. I always had the team, the day of the team, with a joke, and I end up with a joke that normally people don't get and nobody left at, but just and try to clarify to the team. And I know that this is just for this moment in time in history, but it will pass. Things will change. Things will go back to normal or a new normal. So I keep saying people are having a hard time, like developing whatever they're doing in their work is fine. You're with other people and it will pass.
Yeah, completely. And then my final productivity tip is exactly what I said, is that when you get to the end of your working day, if you have got that difficulty in dividing your space, just make sure you take down your work for the day. Close your laptop, put it away, do something like that, create that delineation. And the reason why you should do that is not just because it's a nice thing to do and a nice way to end the day, but it encourages you to be more productive during that time when you are working, because you have that work switch on, work off moment. And that is the delight of having done a number of years of home working when I did run my own business prior to the pandemic. So I was very much, I like to consider that boot camp, basically, for what we've experienced now. Gentlemen, I've got to say thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you along, as per usual.